just going to let you jump into it. Thank you so much for coming, and the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Let me just share my screen with you guys. Okay. So hopefully you can all see that. Yeah, so I'm just going to run through
Yep, you're good.
yesterday. Great, thanks. Well, look, first things first. I think there's been some fantastic discussions, presentations this afternoon, so I feel really quite privileged to be appearing and to be having a little bit of time to talk about plastics here this afternoon. So thank you very much for agreeing to have me on and for the time that you're going to give me here. I really do appreciate that. I think a lot of actually what's been discussed is our conversations and subject areas that are massively important. And I feel somewhat that what I'm going to talk about here, origin, is a very small fish in a very big ocean. And it's really just a bit of a case study about a couple of designers who maybe have tried to set something up in a small space to try and do something positive, and maybe trying to kind of enact some of the visibility of how people can impact on circularity and circular economies in some way. So in terms of Origin, Origin is a company that was started a couple of years ago. It's a very kind of small early stage startup company that basically exists within Grey School of Art, which is part of Robert Gordon University. And my co-colleague, Ben Durack, and myself, before we became lecturers at Grey School of Art, we were both industrial designers. And there's a point in every industrial designer's life, what they call it in the game is the designer's paradox, where all of a sudden one day you wake up and realize, actually, hang on a second, my job is to create lots and lots of stuff, more and more stuff all the time, designing new stuff, and we love our jobs. It's very creative. We love creating new things and designing great stuff, but you have an impact and you have a consequence there. And I think every designer has to kind of question where they sit within that, what impact they have within that, and what they can do in relation to that. And I think that actually is a separate and large discussion about the place that designers have within circular economies and circularity, good design. And a number of people have already touched on that this afternoon. Elizabeth mentioned it in her presentation almost from the beginning. So as industrial designers, we had a lot of experience in designing for injection molding practices and designing for plastics at very large scales and volumes. And whenever you talk about plastics, it always comes down to scale, always. And we were really interested in trying to understand, well, actually, do you know what? As designers and as just everyday people, as consumers, sometimes it's really hard to understand how you can impact or how you can contribute to circularity, because circular economies, they just feel so massive. They feel so difficult to understand. And to a large extent, they are. So we created Origin based around an idea where we wanted to try and see if we could create micro circularity, some kind of circular economy that wasn't based on massive centralized systems, and just a way to try and connect a community or to connect a group of people with a large enough kind of area or a region, should I say, where we could begin to think about how we understand waste streams, how we collect that, and use good design and good design principles that sit within a lot of what we do to try and enact some kind of change. And it's as much about behavior change as it is about product design or design. So as we all know, I'm sure everybody here knows these sorts of statistics, but 6.3 billion tons of plastic waste has been created, most of it used for the likes of 15 minutes. 9% of it has been recycled to date, and there's been a lot of discussion about what's good about recycling and where the challenges are there. But what we felt was that, there's a massive tendency to ship, and then do some more shipping. And because of the way that plastic systems in terms of recycling is very similar to manufacturing in the sense that it's centralized. And we ship to massive places, and then we ship to other places, and then we ship to end users, etc. And we, you know, before we do that, we've shipped to storage areas, etc. And it's really difficult to understand and quantify what the carbon footprint of that is. And we felt that, well, to try and do something, and to be perfectly honest, it was as much a case study as it was really an idea to try and start a small kind of startup company or anything like that. But we wondered whether or not you could take out a lot of that shipping by placing design at the center of a region and designing products within that region that is made from plastic that's diverted away from centralized recycling approaches or processes. And that was really the catalyst for what we wanted to try and do within Origin. And what we're working towards is what we call an Origin hub. And at the moment we have a setup, we already have a test bed space. We went through a wee accelerator program, and we managed to get quite a bit of funding together in competitive pitching and stuff like that, where we could put together a really basic setup for injection molding and for breaking down plastics that we collect locally. We've been engaging with lots of individuals, with companies, with lots of stakeholders in our localized area to look at how we can collect plastics and very much engaging people in our design process. Because for us, it's as much about generating behavior change and educating anybody who wants to engage with us about the circular economy as it is about trying to kind of promote a particular product or a particular item that we have designed. And eventually what we want to try and get to is a process where people can donate plastic, they can see the design and the production process, and they can also take a piece of that away with them. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the next couple of slides. So as I mentioned before, whenever we talk about plastics, we're always talking about scale. Scale is the biggest, most difficult thing when it comes to plastics. And thinking about using injection molding at a localized level was a really difficult one, because how do you use as much plastic as you can within the development of new products within a localized area and actually be able to sell products that aren't astronomically priced, et cetera, et cetera. So we ended up creating two different types of product within what it is that we were trying to do. And that's what we kind of tried to innovate around, really. And one product category is what we call aspirational products. And what's on the screen now is the very first example of that. And we have some kind of design rules, it's like a design ethos rule within what we kind of use as our design process. And this is our first little product. It's about 1.5 years old. And there are lots of kind of recycled plant pots, planters out there. But what we try to do, and again, this was very much us trying to test out whether or not there was buy-in from the community, whether or not we could actually do this at a price point that would work, whether or not we could get enough plastics, how would we engage with that plastic waste stream, what impact does it create at all. But we developed this small planter just for succulents, and it comes with a porcelain ceramic drip tray. It also comes with a piece of seed paper and a recycled craft paper packaging. And so what we're trying to do here is to create a complete out-of-the-box experience that is based around a circular approach, or an approach to circular at a localized level, if we possibly can do that. And our first approach there really was, we realized, we're on a campus. We have access to a very specific community that has a very specific type of waste. And we were able to bypass a lot of the challenges that the larger industries have. And others have talked about that this afternoon as well, about sorting, identifying different types of waste, cleaning, etc. Those are not the spaces that we've been trying to work in. And we've been trying to identify a particular type of waste that we can work with to just try and see if we can put a case study together of whether or not it's possible. And we've been working directly with polypropylene, and that is exclusively the plastic that we've been using in the course of the last year. And if our Origin was able at any point to scale up, we would hopefully like to introduce others. But this first product is really about testing whether or not people were interested in a product line, but again, it's an aspirational product that people want to own, that people want to buy. And the other type of product that we wanted to create were what we would call impact products. And these types of products are much what we would call low regulation products that might connect to certain industries that sit in localities around where an origin hub might be located. So a really good example of that is that we did a project funded by Zero Waste Scotland up in Orkney, where we analysed lots of the plastic volumes, plastic products that came into the island. So the reason it was a good case study is there's 22,500 people live in Orkney. It's very easy to track what comes in, what goes out, and where the waste goes, etc. And a lot of the things that we noticed were there's things like small plastic insulating discs that are used for electrical fencing in the agriculture sector. And what we decided we wanted to try and do was to use the sale of aspirational products within localities to offset the cost of just using plastic to create these sort of impact products like electrical fence insulating discs, because they degrade over time, they replace quite a lot, and they're also quite seasonal as well, and it's quite difficult to manufacture that en masse. But by trying to combine two different types of product stream, we felt like we could try and do that. So in terms of like the design rules that we have and how we go about trying to create products and trying to kind of ensure that there is good design principles at the core of what it is that we're trying to do. Because as I said at the beginning of this, what's really important for us is it's not about designing products. We didn't have to start Origin in order for it to be a profit-making business. We're academics at the university, and what we're trying to do is present an opportunity for approaching circularity at a different scale and in a different way. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create products that are heirlooms. So what we see that as being is a lot of people have talked about single-use plastics. They talked about also about the value of plastics, why it's such a great material, and pardon the pun, that plastic is fantastic. Yes, it is in certain ways. It's the way that we use it. It's the way that we understand it that's so wrong at the moment. So what we want to try and do is create heirlooms where people want to promote the products that they've purchased because of the circular ethos that sits behind them, or they want to pass them on to someone else. They want to have these products for a very long time, that there is not a short lifespan. But also that within what we do is we accept any of those products back, and the plastics can be recycled back. We just chuck them back in the crusher and they get shredded, and we can use that plastic again. We also want to celebrate recycled plastic, and a lot of the talks that we did, a lot of the case studies that we did at the beginning was about people talking about, well, is waste plastic? It's great that it gets recycled, but as a kind of a high-end design-based product, sometimes it didn't feel like it had that sort of premium quality. And one of the things that we decided we wanted to do was to always try to elevate the material. So using recycled plastic in a way where we combine it with a different material. So any product we develop, waste plastic is a component part of that particular product. And our first little planter was a good example of that, because the porcelain drip tray gives it that little bit of kind of quality that elevates the quality of the recycled plastic and presents it in a way where people want to engage with it. And other things like the marbling that everybody is becoming aware of as being indicative of recycled plastics is something that we're very, very keen to try to make sure that we can kind of control, in terms of the fact that all of our products will have a particular type of marbling. And we've been working with some companies to look at how we actually control that within the process. We're also looking at design for manufacture, cradle to cradle kind of thinking, where we place those principles right at the core of what it is that we're designing and developing, and we never want to put something out that we can't take back, and that circularity has to sit at the core of all of the different elements that sit within a product that becomes an Origin product. And also in relation to kind of regulations, we've been really keen to try and make sure that because we're such a small company, we're just a startup, that we're not trying to tackle products that are highly regulated. So, we don't go anywhere near like food grade products or anything like that. That's not the space that we're operating in. And what we're very much trying to do here is just trying to describe and prove a potentially different approach to what circularity can be. So at the moment, we're exploring new products, and a lot of others have talked about these types of materials as well, where we combine recycled plastics with things like ceramics, papers, metals, where you will have a plastic component, which is the feature. It's the main accent. It's the thing that we elevate within an assembly of some kind. And we're looking at things like lighting, and we're looking at there's lots of really interesting kind of soap dishes going on, and candle holding type devices, and all sorts of stuff that may or may not ever make it to market. But even through that, we're doing things like design sprints on social media. And in the last slide, you'll see where you can kind of catch us on social media. But we do really short, sharp design sprints where we ask people to engage with us to tell us the type of products that we might design and develop, and then we'll do a design sprint for 2 weeks to see if we can develop a product that might suit what the most popular suggestion might have been. But the whole point around that is actually behavior change, and it's about education, because we get lots of questions about, well, what kind of plastics is it? And we've had lots of discussion here this afternoon about the confusion around all of the numbers that are associated with different types of plastics, and which ones can be recycled and which ones can't be recycled, etc., etc. So it's as much about engaging in that discussion and trying to affect some kind of positive behavior change as it is about the promotion of new products. We want to place really good design principles right at the core of what's possible within new design, basically. So I just want to take an opportunity to thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk today. And I'd love to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Now you're unmuted.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. Wow, okay. Daniel, thank you so much. I really, really love what you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
Before I jump in with a question, I would like to open it up to those folks on Zoom and see if anybody else has any questions. See, I don't see anything popping up via chat. Yvonne, could you check the participants list to see if anybody has their hands up?
It's because we are here.
No, there is no questions for the moment.
Okay, fantastic. I just have one question. This kind of relates back to this idea we were talking a little bit about earlier about consumer guilt. And while I absolutely love what you guys are doing, I'm just kind of like wondering, like, what are you guys doing to sort of like educate people to just kind of make sure that the consumers that might end up using recycled plastic, to make sure that they sort of still understand that, this is a product that, while it is being reused, isn't necessarily, the end all be all of sustainability?
I think that's a really good question. And there's been lots of talk about the fact that we're making more and more and more plastic. We're still making more plastic. And what we're all about is using the plastic that already exists, if wherever possible. But we do lots. I mean, we do through the fact that we're connected to a university. We take a lot of time, and we spend a lot of time within our design courses actually to talk about this particular subject area. So we believe that educating new designers about sustainability and about circularity is of prime importance, and that connects to what we do whenever we're visible in any of the shows that we do, or any of the kind of events that we do on various different types of media, social media platforms, where it's not just about talking about products. We actually talk a lot about the process, and we connect that as much as we can to information that is available to us about circularity. And a good example of that is in 2018, Zero Waste Scotland, which is the leading authority here in Scotland in relation to waste, published statistics where it showed that 98% of our plastic waste in Scotland gets shipped elsewhere to be processed. And that's a staggering number. And whilst we're, yes, designing new products, and yes, we're using our design skills to develop new things, we're actually doing that so that we can educate people about product life cycle, about the differences in materials, and about the kind of the status of the recycling and manufacturing and consumption models that we all engage with all the time.
If I could just inquire a little bit about your process. So like you say that, like, people can like come in and actually see your process, like from start to finish. In terms of like, the plastics that you're using, I mean, are you like manually sorting materials when they sort of like come in?
Yeah. So again, we are like at the beginnings of the beginning, but we absolutely do that. And we've partnered with a few different companies, and there's some quite large scale brewers around us, and they have plastics that maybe there are things like one of your other commentators earlier said that single-use plastics aren't just kind of like little things that we eat with and then throw away. They can also be larger things that just get used and thrown away. And caps for certain casks and barrels and things like that are a good example of that. And we've been taking and collecting a lot of that within our region that would otherwise be discarded, and we utilize that within new products. But what we're able to do is, yes, we built certain pieces of kit within our test bed space, and people are able to come and see us shred and break down plastics, and we're also able to see the likes of a mini planter get injection molded into our small aluminium tools right on the site. But we also do a lot of that on social media as well. And we're also doing other things like there's things I've not really been able to talk about, but we've always been really interested in the use of new technologies for streamlining the way that kind of manufacturing is made, and trying to kind of heighten awareness about tooling and production and stuff like that. And all of that, I think, serves to just to educate people about what goes on in the background in terms of product development and product manufacture, actually.
Just out of curiosity, have you, or I suppose I should say, are you guys currently, or do you have any plans to play around with things like 3D printing and stuff like that as well, in addition to injection molding?
Absolutely. So it's a good question. We've been working with a company here in Scotland, which are a local authority, and they have they take care of a lot of historical sites, and within those sites they have like cafes, and they have different facilities where plastics are discarded. And we've been working on a project with them to take their own plastics that is discarded from their own sites, and instead of that being discarded into the waste stream systems, we take it, and we've been breaking them down and injection molding them into new designs for small products like magnets, etc., that they can sell back within their site. So they're not buying more virgin plastic items, they're actually taking plastic from their own sites and using that to develop new products that can then be sent back to us at a later date. But we've been actually using SLA 3D printed tools to test the first levels of those, because as I'm sure most people will know, the process to test out one of those tools could require an investment of 10, 20, 30,000 pounds before you ever get to a point where you've approved the product. And no company in this space could survive that. So 3D printing tooling, 3D printed tooling, you can test something for a matter of a couple of £100,
Yeah.
and you can understand the viability of a product really, really quickly. So it allows for small kind of test projects like this to exist, where really what you're doing is you're pushing around the idea of what design, what manufacture, and what recycling can be in terms of how they connect together.
Just out of curiosity, do you guys have any concerns about the presence of like adulterants and plasticizers and stuff like that in the plastics that are coming into your process? Is that sort of like entered under the radar in any significant way?
It hasn't yet. And to be honest, we've been really careful about making sure that we are designing and developing products that are very low regulation. And as a result of that, we're just taking a very specific type of waste stream, breaking it down and making really basic products out of it at this point.
Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any other questions, queries, concerns? Okay, I think that might be it. Well, Daniel, thank you so very much. I'm really kind of keen to see what you guys come up with over the coming years.
I think
that... Thanks for your time, and I really appreciate it. And I really enjoyed all the discussions this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us, Daniel. And also from my side, a big thank you for your presentation, and great to see what can be made out of our plastic waste.